It's good to be with everybody today. And Mary, thank you, and the Voices team for hosting this event, and with the partnership of leadership in Counterterrorism, Alumni Association, and the International Network supporting victims of terrorism and mass violence. It is really an honor for me to be here with victims and a group of panel experts, many of whom I've worked with for years. We gather at this Voice Symposium as a sign of resilience, to reflect on the past, envision the future with hope, so we can enhance the present. Adaptive resilience is a shared journey, and I invite you to join me on this journey today of resilience, looking back on our experiences, and then imagining what the future could be by finding a purpose to bring about change. On the morning of September the 11th, it was the clearest of blue skies. I was in the street with my firefighters at a routine gas emergency. Then suddenly, we heard the loud noise of a plane, and we watched the first plane deliberately aim and crash into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. In that moment, I knew this was no accident, that this was a direct attack. And as the first chief at the scene, I took command. And I could tell you that every firefighter, every paramedic, every police officer, and other responders looked at the burning building and knew that they were going to the most dangerous fire of their lives. And they made a personal decision to go in. I remember one fire lieutenant from Engine 33 coming up to me and not saying a word. We looked at each other, wondering if we were both going to be okay. And then I told that lieutenant, as I told many others, to go up, to evacuate the building and rescue those that were trapped by smoke and flames. And before 9 o'clock, I gave another order. I ordered for the South Tower to be evacuated. However, things were happening very quickly that morning, and as we rushed to save 20,000 people who were in their greatest moment of need. And little could I imagine, or any of us could imagine, that in 102 minutes, 4 passenger planes were used as terrorist missiles, and there were 2 loud, rumbling sounds of the towers collapsing. Then, on this beautiful morning that was full of bright sunshine, it turned completely dark, so I could not see the hand in front of my face. And in the dark dust cloud of crumbled concrete and twisted steel, I wondered if I was still alive. On 9/11, the world witnessed the mass murder of nearly 3,000 people from over 90 countries, including 23 NYPD and 37 Port Authority police officers, and 343 of my firefighters, one of whom was that fire lieutenant from Engine 33, who was my brother Kevin. Sadness touched all our hearts, and on that day, our world was changed forever. Through storytelling, we not only explain what happened, but also show how we turn traumatic memories into a source of preparedness and hope. Counterterrorism and crisis leaders must think about the unthinkable. to prepare for complex challenges. After returning to FDNY as its first Deputy Fire Commissioner, I testified before the U.S. Congress Homeland Security Subcommittee, along with, at the time, Fire Commissioner Laura Kavanagh, who is here today with us, and with NYPD's Deputy Commissioner for Counterterrorism, Rebecca Weiner, who you've met. The committee's hearing met on September 12th, 2023, at the 9/11 Memorial Museum. And I could tell you, and I'm sure my colleagues could tell you the same thing, it felt eerie testifying in the museum with the World Trade Center last column behind us, representing all those that are lost, and visibly painted with FDNY 343. Stillness filled the open space as our voices echoed off the last column and the slurry wall of Ground Zero to hold back new threats. Congress had to be made aware that terrorism warnings are again blinking red. Like 9/11, we are confronted with the use of fire as a weapon, especially when it's deployed in combinations with other weapons in a terrorist attack. Another pressing concern in our modern world is cyber attacks with physical consequences, taking down our electrical system and communications. A third existential risk today is climate security, which involves managing the effects of more frequent and intense weather events that threaten lives and displace communities, as we've seen with Hurricane Katrina, Superstorm Sandy, the wildfires in Maui and Los Angeles, and the floods in Texas. Globally, climate-related disasters could lead to climate conflict between regions and countries. Extreme weather events might also create an opportunity for terrorists to target vulnerable populations who lack food, water, and shelter. Homeland security, cybersecurity, and climate security are our security challenges, and our panels will discuss future risks and management strategies. Our future safety depends on counterterrorism awareness, preparedness, and response to mitigate the impact of these threats. Unless leaders can adapt to these new risks, they will be faced with the same unfamiliar crisis world as we did on 9/11. As the World Trade Center towers fell, it demanded a massive response of unprecedented unity of effort and countless organizations, shifting emotion from grief to collective action, which is what we're doing today. But what do leaders do in a crisis? Having been forged in fire, I found that crisis leaders emerge to create a deliberate calm, ensuring connections to critical information and empowering agencies to collaborate on developing innovative solutions to novel problems, and then coordinating teams to carry out those solutions. Connecting to voice, video, and data for situational awareness is the initial lifeline in a crisis. Information must be shared in real time amongst agencies and to the public. The old saying, "A picture is worth 1,000 words," is so true. A few seconds of video on 9/11 would have made a difference in our evacuation. Today, agencies transmit images from helicopters and drones, along with radio messages and building data to each other and to handheld devices at the scene. As connecting provides better situational awareness, collaborating to exchange ideas with others is a vital lifeline for decision makers. In a crisis, we gather near each other, and we flatten command to encourage communication across groups and different ranks. We also practice what I call crisis empathy, by asking our counterparts about their concerns and then verbally acknowledging their perspectives. A few years ago, there was an active shooter here in Staten Island. NYPD ESU was about to make an entry to apprehend the perpetrator who had a long gun. At the time, I was FDNY's chief of counterterrorism, and I met with my counterpart in NYPD, the Deputy Commissioner for Counterterrorism at the time, John Miller, who you'll meet later this morning. And speaking with John and NYPD's chiefs, I used crisis empathy to articulate what my counterparts were feeling. I said, I know this is a dangerous situation for your officers, and I'm here with my paramedics in case an officer gets wounded. Under force protection, my medics will go in to save that officer. Appreciating each other's diverse roles creates an atmosphere to encourage collaboration to manage a crisis. Coordinating efforts to align core competencies is the third lifeline. Crisis leaders rely on a network of teams to implement tactics by getting agencies to move together under a unified command while maintaining decentralized control based on location and function. My journey, shaped by many disasters and lessons learned, has moved me to design a challenge coin to symbolize these leadership values. And as you can see here, this is the coin. And you can see that the coin features the Brooklyn Bridge and the new World Trade Center in the background. And I engraved on the coin, the art of crisis leadership is to connect, collaborate, and coordinate, as a reminder that our duties to extend these crisis lifelines in dangerous situations is so important, and not to let the crisis or the threat environment pull us down. These crisis leadership principles, honed from the experience of 9/11, are urgently needed today because the next extreme event looms on our horizon, calling us to respond again with bravery. In the panel discussions today, listen for these principles. On 9/11, we rushed into the World Trade Center to stop the killing. And since then, we have been trying to stop the dying. This became painfully clear a few weeks after we testified in front of Congress, when the 343rd FDNY member died from 9/11 smoke and dust, equaling the 343 who perished in the attacks. The heartbreaking toll of 9/11-related cancers and diseases keep growing, leaving us who were exposed to World Trade Center dust to worry about our future. Through tears, 9/11 united the world, giving all victims of terrorism a voice. Today, the stories from victims worldwide are as powerful as they were nearly a quarter of a century ago. But with our stories and the work that we do comes a responsibility to be the global society we need to be. One that is compassionate in supporting victims and collaborative in our prevention and response efforts. In September of 2022, at the United Nations Global Congress of Victims of Terrorism in New York, I was asked to deliver a speech to hundreds of victims while wearing my FDNY dress uniforms at the podium usually reserved for ambassadors and presidents of nations. I wondered what words I could say to victims from around the world who have suffered so much pain from injury or the loss of loved ones from terrorism. I believed there was no words I could say until I heard the words of resilience through gentle power of storytelling combined with big hugs from so many victims. Victims like a woman from Argentina who lost a husband in 2017 in a ramming attack in New York City. Or a runner who was injured in the Boston Marathon bombing, who's counseling victims now of violence. She can't be with us today because she's in Minneapolis counseling children. Through these stories, I realized that victims came to the UN with the hope of making a difference. So, in the United Nations General Assembly Hall, I set aside my role as fire chief, and I humbly stepped up to the podium as one of many victims from around the world. I expressed what was in all our hearts, and is what I share with you today to conclude my talk. We do not ignore the pain of being victims of terrorism. Instead, we give it purpose to bring about change. Because without purpose, there is no hope. And without hope, there is no global call to action. The purpose of this symposium and why we are here is to sustain hope by unifying efforts to prevent terrorist attacks, to manage large-scale events, and to support victims in the face of great tragedy. The courage of our collective voices and ordinary acts of kindness is what will change the world. Together, we can make a difference. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.